Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and over the next hour, we'll be talking a lot about what's going on with the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and, of course, the New Orleans Pelicans. As always, we're going to have a great guest panel for you. Bradley Handwerger of WWLTV.com and Brett Martell of the Associated Press will join us on tonight's program, and we're going to look at a litany of what's going on within the sports world here in New Orleans. And we got a little lanyard for you tonight as I reach down and show you what I have here for you. We promised it to you last week, and, of course, we're going to deliver this week. Instead of 2 pair of tickets to the Tulane-Tulsa game on Saturday in the Dome, we're going to give you a chance at 3 pair of tickets to the Tulane-Tulsa game in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome on Saturday. Tulane's playing great right now, looking for an opportunity to get a bowl bid. They're, again, taking on Tulsa, have not beaten Tulsa since 1968. And you're going to get your chance to be in that number on Saturday to cheer on the Green Wave. They're hoping for a packed house. Again, Tulane in the past, the Dome been a little cavernous for this program. But a lot of people, as you heard C.J. Johnson this week, talking about jumping on that Tulane bandwagon. So, again, get your dialing fingers ready because somewhere in the program this evening, 866-3200 will be the number. We'll give you a chance to take yourself and a friend to the Tulane-Tulsa game. Also, again, the Pelicans last night lost their first game in preseason. Again, a great effort against the Miami Heat. We're going to discuss that. Of course, the Pelicans playing very, very well in the preseason and look poised to be able to make a playoff run in this upcoming season. So we're going to get into that, get in depth into that. Also, again, LSU coming off a tough loss to Ole Miss. I know you got a lot of comments and, of course, want to vent a little bit. We'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit about Les Miles' clock management. We'll get into the reasons why this team was not up and ready to go on Saturday night in a game that obviously, let's face it, this was Ole Miss's SEC championship. They get up for this game each and every year, and there was really no excuse for the Tigers to ultimately be in a situation where they were not ready to play. And really for the first time in a very long time, the Tigers are in a position where they can play the role of spoiler, but any chance at a national championship or any chance at an SEC championship has probably gone the wayside in the Grove at Oxford. So again, we'll discuss that as we go forward tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. And of course, the New Orleans Saints, now coming off a bye week, they're in a position now with really the toughest part of their schedule. Interesting scenario with the Saints as they take on the Buffalo Bills in the Dome this weekend. 6 of the next 10 opponents for the New Orleans Saints will have mobile quarterbacks, running quarterbacks. It is going to be a real challenge for Rob Ryan and that defense to be able to come up with a scheme, and a scheme that will be, again, ever-changing week to week to be able to contain some of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. When you start talking about Colin Kaepernick, you talk about Russell Wilson, and of course Cam Newton from Carolina. So a lot to talk about this evening on Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, you can listen live, download the podcast of my radio show at ericasher.com. You can also catch the last few episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports on ericasher.com as well. And, of course, you're checking us out right now live on WLAE-TV. My name is Eric Asher. This is Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, New Orleans, we got some Tulane tickets for you, and, of course, a great conversation coming up with Bradley Handwerger of WWLTV.com and, of course, also Brett Martell of the Associated Press. A quick pause for the cause, and we'll come back. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. And we already had 4. So I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Reg?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're gonna be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf, fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. Remember, a little bit later on the program, you'll get your chance to go to the Tulane-Tulsa game, but let's introduce our guests tonight. Bradley Hanwerg of WWLTV.com and Brett Martell of the Associated Press. Guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Sure, glad to be here.
First of all, Bradley, tell us a little bit about what's going on over at Channel 4, and of course, you've been involved with the website over there for a long time, contributing obviously on the television side. Tell us a little bit about what's happening.
Well, it's a 5-1 Saints team. Pretty much, it's all hands on deck for Saints coverage. So it's pretty much me sitting there doing all the Saints coverage I can. Pelican season coming up, putting a little effort into that, and then LSU always, and Tulane being good, we'll try to get as much online there too.
Yep, no doubt. And of course, Brett, it's funny, you work for the Associated Press. You've done stuff from Katrina coverage to obviously sports. I guess you're back where you love to be, doing sports coverage again, huh?
Right, pretty much sports full time since 2006. And it's busy down here because in that time, LSU's been good most years. The Saints have been good most of those years.
Yes.
It's the Peyton era.
Yes, it is.
So, there's that overlap, plus all the other events that go on here, Super Bowl, PGA Tournament, Sugar Bowl, Final Fours, and NBA All-Star Game.
We're a lucky city.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt. There's much like on my radio show, there is never a loss for a subject when it comes to politics, and the same way can be said for sports now, especially post-Katrina, which has been a real driver, I think, in our recovery. No doubt about it.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I mean, I think, people look at having a good time and being able to get their mind away from things, and what better way to do it than sports, especially when they're playing well.
Yes, no doubt about it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Saints. Saints, again, coming out of their bye week. Brett, let's start with you. Your thoughts on the first half of the season?
I was a little not concerned, but interested to see how this team would react with everything that happened last year, and were they going to be able to put it behind, especially with Sean Payton coming back. But 6 games in, I don't think there's any question. 5-1 is probably about as good as they could expect considering the schedule they had, and I just think they're an improving team. 5-1, they could be much better than that.
Brett?
Yeah, I think I also believe they are improving, and that they are very realistic about how much they still need to improve. And one thing that I took away from them right before they left from the bye was that they understood that they easily could have started the year 0-2 and been 3-3 because the first 2 games came down to basically the last play, and so did the New England game. So you're looking at a team that understands they played really well in 3 games, but there's 3 games that could have gone either way. So they could have ranged from 6-0 to 3-3. They know it, but the good news is that because of, I think, Peyton's quality control and attention to detail, when it comes down to those close games, they're winning more than they're losing.
Guys, Jimmy Graham looks like he may be out for this weekend. He did not practice again today. They've been kind of mum on what the injury is, and again, specifically on whether he will be available for Sunday's game. First of all, your thoughts about the loss of Graham and how they can augment that within their offense. It does look like they're going to be getting Lance Moore back, which I think will be one of the keys going forward. But Brett, let's start with you, and your thoughts on the loss of Graham if he's not able to go on Sunday, and again, who takes over really the lion's share of what he's been carrying on the offensive side.
Yeah, well, first, I think that while he may be physically capable of suiting up and getting out there, I would think it would be unwise to play him at this point, and furthermore, I doubt they will. But, you know, I remember a few years back when Colston was the man, and when he would be out, Drew Brees always found a way to distribute the ball equitably among whoever was left. Sean Payton found a way to say, well, these are the receivers I do have who are healthy, so where are the matchups that are favorable there? And look, we've seen consistently over 7 years that this passing offense just really isn't slowed down by the loss of one good receiver.
I don't want to say they improve with Graham out. I mean, he's obviously one of the most dynamic players in the league, but the way they function and the way Drew Brees moves the ball around and kind of passes to everybody, it kind of opens things up a little bit when Graham's not there, because there's no question that he is in target and really involved in Graham and keeping Graham involved in the offense. And when he's not there, all of a sudden I think you're going to find Lance Moore and Marcus Colston and Darren Sproles and Kenny Stills, all these guys all of a sudden that we haven't seen in a while are probably going to come back into the fold, and it may make it a little bit more difficult to cover.
Also, Cam Jordan was injured in the game against New England. From what I understand, he was a little bit limited at practice, but more than likely, he said going into the bye week that he felt he would be ready to go when they take on Buffalo on Sunday. Guys, what's your take on that? You think that Jordan will be back? You think he'll be full speed? You think he'll be ready to go?
I think he'll be ready to go. I mean, from the portion of practice that we see, he seems to be moving around well. I mean, running from drill to drill or whatnot. But, we saw him come back in that New England game after his injury, and he still performed pretty well. He may not have had the push and strength out of that ankle that he injured, but he was still, a force, I guess you could say, still pushed the pocket a little bit. I think he'll be back. I mean, obviously, having the bye week helped for him in that regard.
Well, I found that, with Sean Payton's teams, offensively, he doesn't like players who miss practice on Wednesday and Thursday to be in the game because of his scheming on his side of the ball. But I haven't found that rule to hold quite as true for defensive players. And I think with a player they trust like Cam Jordan, who's so effective off the edge rushing, they just would rather rest him during the week. They need him on Sunday.
Yes.
So, take it easy on him in practice.
This week, Martez Wilson, former third-round pick for the team, was waived by the New Orleans Saints. Surprised?
A little bit. I mean, here's a guy that I think coming into the season they had pretty high hopes for. But then injuries start happening, and the defense has to change a little bit. And, he got injured in training camp, dislocated left elbow. And all of a sudden, he's missing important, valuable time to learn the defense. And, once they change to what is basically now a base 4-2-5, that doesn't leave a lot of room for him on the defense.
I agree with Bradley. And frankly, I felt like ever since he's been drafted, he's been a guy that you saw the athleticism and the potential, but rarely ever saw that potential realized.
Yes.
And I think it just got to the point where he was disposable, and they needed to make a move. So,
again, a pretty darn good pass rusher at times. Never really was a guy that you could count on as a player that could play the run or consistently cover in the passing game. At times, he was a liability in those two phases of the defense. I was a little surprised they gave up on him, but as you mentioned, Bradley, playing so many four-down linemen, I don't think they expected that coming into the season. No. But now they see with a lot of these young linemen, they maybe didn't have a need for a guy that had kind of underachieved during his time here in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the benefit of having a coordinator like Rob Ryan is that he does seem to be very flexible.
Yeah.
And he's been figuring out gradually what his guys do well. and where he's been pleasantly surprised that he can play more guys, some guys more than expected. He's just doing what seems expedient.
I mean, to your point about finding players, I mean, Tyrone Walker and Glenn Foster, guys that they didn't really expect to count on, or before the season, and all of a sudden here they are. Tyrone Walker's been injured, but when he has played, he has done pretty well, and Glenn Foster the same way. That it does make a player like Martez Wilson disposable.
And of course, that all came about because of the fact that Ryan Griffin was at least being courted by a couple of teams. From what we hear, the St. Louis Rams were really were trying to bring him in. The Saints elevate him from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. What do you think his role is going forward? Obviously, this year he's just going to be that third quarterback, but is this kind of a signal that ultimately they look at him as the backup? They look at him as maybe a guy. I think it's a little too early to groom somebody for Drew Brees' heir apparent, but to have a solid backup, what do you think his role is going forward?
I look, he's probably the next Chase Daniel. Good guy that they really believe and trust in. I mean, you listen and kind of watch the way Drew Brees talks about him, and he lights up a little bit. There's obviously, I don't know if it's a little brother, big brother type relationship, but there's some respect there. There's some admiration for what Ryan Griffin's been through and how he has handled things. And I think they see possibly another Chase Daniel type, a guy that they feel comfortable coming in if needs be, but they don't expect to come in.
Right, and Brees has 3 more seasons after this one under contract, and he believes that the way he's been taking care of his body since he arrived here, that he could be in for an extension on top of that. Yes. However, he's been pretty much healthy the entire time he's been here.
I'm knocking on wood right now, Brett.
And you got to have, I mean, I think that we've all watched this team over the years and thought, God, they're good, but what if this one guy gets injured, the whole season goes in the toilet? And I think they're really trying to groom a backup that you couldn't say that anymore, definitively, quite as definitively, and I think they see that potential in Griffin.
And well, as I say, and you look at it in being in CJ and Curtis Johnson's offense at Tulane, that gives them a step up over anybody else they were going to bring in. Yes. And I think, while a lot of rookies, they're going to have to go through the whole progression. He's already been through most of it, so he's an easy guy that can just slip in.
Plus, I think his measurables are much better than what we saw to Chase Daniel. I think he's a more prototype pro quarterback. He's got a better arm. He's a bigger player. He may not be as mobile as a guy like Daniel was, but he's a guy that ultimately I think you can trust once he gets a chance to be able to get on the field. And I think that's kind of why there were some teams around the NFL that were looking his way because of the potential.
Well, they would have seen him move the Saints down the field in the preseason. And they know that whatever his numbers were lacking in college, he did not have a lot of blocking those years. he was pretty much getting killed and playing hurt all the time. So and that's a huge factor for a quarterback. So I think there's a lot of respect for his ability and his potential.
Yeah, no, I mean the fact that they felt compelled to put him on the active roster tells you everything you really need to know about how they feel about him. 6 of the next 10 teams that the Saints play have mobile quarterbacks. It's going to be a challenge for Rob Ryan. He's going to have to figure out, first of all, how to contain those mobile quarterbacks, something that he wasn't able to do, that this team was not able to do last season. They got thrashed by mobile quarterbacks. Also, when you look at the NFL, because the film study being a copycat lead in a lot of cases, teams will dissect what he does and how he plays those quarterbacks. So he's going to have to be able to be in a situation where he kind of changes his philosophy almost on a week-in, week-out basis, depending on what type of mobile quarterback he plays. Guys, what do you think about that? And what do you think about that challenge that's in front of Rob Ryan? Because this is the meat of the schedule, and you've got a dynamic that really the Saints haven't seen the first half of their schedule.
We haven't seen the offenses use that mobile aspect of the game like we did last year. The read option seems not, I won't say it's gone away completely, but it's not nearly the factor that was last year right now. But I go back to the Miami game on Monday night when Ryan Tannehill did it. He used the read option, and he got a nice long gain on it. And I think that it's going to be a problem for the Saints if they can't figure out a way to contain that. I mean, everybody got sucked in, and Ryan Tannehill went outside and gained it. The one advantage that I think the Saints do have right now is playing that 4-2-5. They have speedy guys in the back, and they got 3 safeties. Two of them, maybe all, including Raphael Bush, who can play the linebacker type position, and that will help them, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, and the Saints safeties are pretty physical and pretty versatile, so that gives you hope that they'll be able to help, and support when you have a running quarterback. And what I just wonder about the read option not being quite as prevalent as Bradley mentioned is it because coaches think it's not quite as effective because defenses are adjusting, or just because they think it's too risky, because we've seen quarterbacks take a little more of a beating than they would have liked.
Yes.
You know.
Look at Robert Griffin. I mean, he's been a shadow of what he was.
Not even close. And I think that's one of the things that I think NFL offensive coordinators and head coaches have to worry about going forward. It's one thing to bring in this new offense that gets everybody excited, but in the past, you never want to expose your quarterback to the type of hits they are. And there is a fine line now between when you are a passer and when you are a running quarterback. And again, NFL defenses are taking advantage of that fine line.
I think, one, you look at Russell Wilson. I think he is the prototypical guy of the future because he can run, but he's not a running quarterback. He's a fantastic passer. He has the running game that can help him out. But it's funny, we talk about these fads in the offense. Look at the Wildcat. That was a fad.
Yes.
That was something that was not going to last. I think the read option is something that could last, but you just don't want your quarterback to pay the price every time he runs the ball.
It just requires the kind of discipline. It requires a running quarterback to have the kind of discipline that a non-running quarterback has when he scrambles, which is to get out of bounds or slide way before you get hit.
Yes.
And understand you don't need 5 extra yards. You've got a positive play. Stay healthy and try to get another positive play after that.
Well, and also, I mean, again, one of the things you're going to have to watch for going forward is maybe not a guy that's looking to run to get positive yards, but running to extend the play, using his feet to extend the play, where looking for a breakdown in that secondary. And that's been a problem in the past with this team, and that's something obviously they're going to have to address as they take on, as I mentioned, 6 of the next 10 games with mobile quarterbacks.
You know, one of the things that I think does help is that the Saints this year have gotten pressure with their front four. So when you talk about players extending plays on the Saints, that doesn't seem to be as likely this year as it may have been in the past. And when you have those 4 guys, or maybe 5, a guy blitzing, running after the quarterback and really containing him, then your guys in the back end, they're going to be able to cover, I think, a little better if the quarterback has to have his head on a swivel, isn't necessarily looking down the field.
Right. Guys, I want to shift gears for a moment. I want to stay with professional football. Sam Montgomery was waived by the Houston Texans this week. Supposedly, he was involved in a hotel room with 2 other rookies, and they were smoking marijuana in the hotel room. Since then, Sam Montgomery has submitted to an independent drug test, in which was found that, again, he did not test positive for any drugs. Question for you. Guy's got a tremendous amount of potential. He didn't have a great last year at LSU. He's also a guy that ultimately, when you look at where he was with the Houston Texans, was physically unable to perform, came to camp out of shape, had a back injury, and really has not lived up to the expectations the Texans thought they were getting in a 3rd-round pick. But yet he's got a tremendous amount of potential. It looks like he needs a team that maybe has a veteran presence, that's got a structure, discipline, something the Saints have. Is that a guy in your mind that ultimately the Saints should maybe look at and maybe bring in even as a practice squad player?
What do you think?
I think it's a risk-reward proposition, but if the risk is relatively low if you're not using a draft pick on a guy like that, and the Saints have used even low draft picks like the 5th rounder on Knicks, in 2008. Right? So the thing is, Peyton and Kubiak are friends.
Yes.
So, and I know Peyton, right? He has a lot of, I have a hard time envisioning him taking that guy, but you just never know. I mean, I guess it really depends on, I think Peyton over Kubiak will trust his own scouting personnel, and they'll just look at the risk reward and see what happens.
Maybe if the defense hadn't been playing as well as they are right now, it'd be a question of like, all right, we need to see who else can come in and help. But they're in such a good position on the roster and with the guys who are contributing that I'm not sure it's worth the reward, the possible reward to bring him in.
I think maybe it's a lot of us are spoiled. We saw him in LSU, and we saw the dominant player he could be. We did see a drop-off, obviously, in his last year at LSU. He did not live up to the potential. He kind of bombed out at the combine, wasn't the guy that everybody thought he was going to be, and, of course, subsequently slipped down to the 3rd round. But, again, I look at it as, when you look at guys that come out of college and play as well as he did in the SEC when he played, he's got a tremendous amount of potential. The question, as you guys mentioned, do you really want to take a chance on this guy when you have so many players on this roster right now that really play well along the defensive line?
Again, it's just, luckily, if they want to go that way, he's out on the market. They're not going to have to give up anything for him unless there's somebody on the only thing they give up is somebody on the roster right now. It's just a matter, do they think his potential outweighs the person that they would possibly release?
Yeah, and Bradley's right. Timing has a lot to do with it, and you know, so right now might not be the right time. Maybe it's a better kind of off-season move where you can really kind of feel it out and take them through OTAs, mini camp, and see how it's working, and you know, before it's, you know, not during the season.
From what I read, there are multiple teams that are interested, as you know. I mean, again, anytime you get a guy that has the measurables that he has, and more than likely he'll be off the market within the next couple of days. But it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, and if he turns his career around, if he realizes that, again, he's already stubbed his toe here, and again, the NFL, they're not going to put up with all the shenanigans that's been going on in Houston.
No. I mean, if he gets another shot, it's his last shot.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I agree. Guys, last week, 2 weeks ago against New England, we saw the New England offense going with an up-tempo offense in an effort to be able to keep Rob Ryan's packages off the field. Do you guys believe that this may be a recipe for other offenses to try to copy, to be able to try to augment, or to try to I guess, look at what Rob Ryan has done and try to counteract that?
Well, just because other offenses try to copy doesn't mean they'll execute it as well as a, you know, Tom Brady-led offense does. But I'm sure it's something that they're all thinking about. At the same time, you could argue the Saints still should have won that game, so it was effective in its way, but it wasn't an overriding factor in the game anyway. So.
I mean, I know it was preseason, but we saw them have difficulties with it against the Chiefs. And again, they didn't have a lot of their defensive packages in, but we saw a problem with that when they played Oakland in week 2. At the end of the first half, when they were trying to go down the field, they ran the hurry up, and the Saints had problems with it. I think this has been a problem going back to the preseason, and it's just going to be a matter of, did they take the time over the bye week to realize when we're in this up-tempo offense, we have to really pull back what we're doing and just, you know, play football, or are they going to continue to try to get everything in?
And the good news in that regard, I think, is that when you have guys like Malcolm Jenkins in the back and Curtis Lofton at middle linebacker, you at least have the leadership on the field to kind of get everyone in the right spot pretty quickly. What
do you think Jonathan Vilma's role will be if he comes back off of injured reserve? He sounded a little bit unsure this week on what direction he was going to ultimately go. He talked in a roundabout way about it. You know, again, he feels good now, but ultimately he's worried about what's going to happen after his playing days are over. What do you guys envision? Do you envision him coming back? And if he does, what role do you envision him coming back as?
I'm not really sure. I mean, because you look at it, and Curtis Lofton is entrenched there. There's no question. He is the leader of the defense right now, along with Malcolm Jenkins. But David Hawthorne has played so well. And here's a guy that, you know, came in last year, and people wondered what's the big deal, because he was injured and didn't really do a lot. But he's played extremely well this year when he's been in their packages. So you don't need Jonathan Vilma. You may need his leadership and presence, but, you know, if his knee isn't healthy enough, if you don't like what he's doing, then you don't have to bring him back right now. So I think it's very questionable what they will end up doing with Jonathan Vilma.
What I read between the lines from him is that, one, he's not willing to give up on football yet. He still loves it and still thinks he can contribute. However, if I'm a coach reading that statement, I feel like he's basically saying, I understand that if I'm going to play for you, again, I have to accept a limited role. You know, and he just can't expect to be the every play middle linebacker he was in 2009 or whatever. But you know, he almost seems to understand that if a limited role might be the best for the Saints and for my own long-term health. And I think that, you know, being in the room with the defense and being on the field, being an extra coach on the field, that I can still help this team have that extra intangible, if you will, to, but, you know, go the distance.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, again, I think there's a role for him on this team. It doesn't necessarily have to be in uniform playing. You look at, again, just from a leadership standpoint, he brings so much to the team, but also, again, respected by everyone in that locker room for what he has done for the Saints and throughout his career.
Yeah, he's. I mean, this coaching staff really believes in his leadership ability, and they constantly raved about him, especially throughout the whole, they stuck by him throughout the whole bounty thing.
504-866-3200. This is a live show tonight here on WLAE TV, Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't forget there will be a rebroadcast on Friday at 10 p.m., but we invite your phone calls to join us. Again, Brett Martell of the Associated Press, also Brantley Hadwerger of WBLTV.com is a part of our panel tonight. We're going to shift gears to the Pelicans, but again, the phone lines are open to talk Saints, LSU, Tulane, or the Pelicans. And guys, last night, the Pelicans in their brand new digs, and are they calling it the Perch? What are they calling the arena now? Has anybody come up with a nickname yet?
I guess the Perch would be all right.
The Rookery? I don't
know. But first of all, from what I understand, I haven't had a chance to be in the arena yet. It's been quite a facelift.
It has, and it took me a second to figure out what was going on when we walked in, because that was my first time in the arena since it all. And they've done a good job of taking what they had to work with and expanding it a little bit. On one side, it looks like they've got these really nice club suites that aren't, the sweet suites, but they're club suites. And then on the other side, they've got what looks like a party room of some sort, which I think it's going to be real popular. And then I got a tweet from a fan friend of mine, and she was saying that the big deal with her was a candy concession stand.
Oh. Hey, to each his own.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the arena looked pretty good. I think the thing they did upstairs was trying to say, well, these seats, aren't quite as easy to sell, or they're, unless they're priced right. So they just tried to be creative up there. And they've got the new Halo board. So now it's a double Halo board, I guess, below the suite level and at the base of the upper deck. So it looks good, and also new locker rooms and new
practice
clubs.
facility.
Yeah, the practice facility is great.
Yeah,
they have everything they need now to,
It really feels like there's been a real change here, huh? That this just went from an organization that was kind of fledgling, that wasn't really first class, to now all of a sudden you can compete with any other franchise in the NBA in terms of facilities.
It does, and I look even beyond the facilities. I mean, obviously that's the base, that's where it starts. But the players on the court last night were just, in the first quarter when it was the starters and the people that we're going to see play, they just looked so much smoother and relaxed, and like they were enjoying the game and felt like they were in it against a Miami Heat team that has won 2 straight championships. I think that above all else, you can do what you want with the facelift of the arena, but the product on the floor is going to make people really excited.
Your thoughts on the product on the court right now?
I believe that among elite athletes, and it doesn't always work out this way, and an exception would be like Kobe and Shaq, but generally, when elite athletes are on the floor playing in tandem with athletes that they admire and respect, they somehow seem invigorated, as opposed to tight and under pressure, like they're feeling like they have to do too much, and I wonder if a guy like Eric Gordon, who seems a little bit fragile mentally as well as physically, if that's not the kind of thing that he needs to push him over the edge to be inspired to be on the floor with guys like Holiday and Evans, because obviously that's going to free things up a lot for him, and he's not going to feel like he has to do everything. And Dell Demps raved about how they have that nice combination of youth and experience, because they've all been in the league 4 or 5 years. And they look comfortable, they look energetic. Of course, we didn't get to see Tyreke Evans because he's a little
still banged up.
Yeah, but it's encouraging.
Youngest team in the NBA at average years of 24 years. One of the youngest coaches in the NBA, obviously with Monty Williams. But I like what they've done. They're young, but they're a veteran young.
Sure.
That's the big difference. These guys have come out of high school, or 1 year of college rather, and a lot of guys have been these guys have been in the NBA for a while. They've kind of knocked the rust off, so to speak, from their collegiate days to the NBA, and now they're in a situation where they're in a new situation where they got a coach that really demands defense, but I'm looking forward to the up-tempo style that I think these athletes are going to bring to the table.
Oh, no question. I mean, again, you look at Drew Holiday and the way he plays the game. It's a smart, fast-paced style of basketball. And Anthony Davis, he may be tall, but he's as quick as anybody out there and as athletic as anybody out there. And I just think they're going to be able to run with teams. If they can, as Monty Williams says, keep the ball from going in the net instead of having to inbound it the whole time. If they can play defense and the way he wants and run, I think they're going to be a really fun and exciting and good team.
Yeah.
Well, I was standing next to Eric Spoelstra last night after the game, and one reporter asked him, why did it take you guys until the fourth quarter to get going? Because, of course, that's when they pulled away with this huge run. And Eric looked at her and said, well, that other team is very much improved, first of all, and they were playing well. You know, that was the way he began. And coaches do that sometimes just to be respectful, but it sounded genuine the way he said it. You could just kind of see it in his body language, hear it in his voice, and you know, it shows because they've got 3 guys who are on Team USA this summer, and that's not counting Eric Gordon, who when he's healthy is impossible to guard one-on-one. And that's also, you know, not counting Tyreek Evans.
Right.
And I mean, they have 5 guys who are capable of averaging double figures in scoring, and then and can handle the ball because, like you said, Anthony Davis was a guard when he was a kid before his growth spurt, so he has a smooth mid-range jumper, you know. So I mean, they could have 4 guys or 5 guys on the floor at any time who can handle the ball and score.
If there is a weakness on this team right now, it probably is the center position. Of course, Robin Lopez was here last year. He was a space eater. He was a guy that was going to go down, a willing rebounder and defender. What do you think they will get out of the center position? Who do you ultimately think ascends and gets the majority of the minutes there before the end of the season?
I mean, right now, I think it's Greg Stiemsma, and I think it will end up being Stiemsma. You know, he reminds me a little bit of Robin Lopez. He's not going to wow you with athleticism, but he's going to take up space and he's going to, you know, do the small things. He's not going to be an all-star, but he may do the baseline of what's needed for this offense to run and for the defense to play well. I'm
curious to see how he works out. In a way, I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but they should really tell him you should not shoot unless it's a dunk or, you know, a putback or a layup, because of all the other guys I mentioned before who can score. He needs to play defense and just try to give him a defensive presence in the middle, and otherwise just set screens for his teammates on the offense.
Defend the rim.
Yeah, and you know, so I don't think there's a lot of pressure on him to do much more than hustle and play good defense and be a good big man in that respect. And in the Western Conference, I think you see a lot more small ball. And the Hornets are set up to be prolific at small ball. I'm curious to see how it works out for them, you know, especially if they remain healthy. What are your expectations for the Pelicans this year?
I think fewer than I'm looking for anywhere between 35 and 45 wins, but I think if realistically if they get fewer than 37, 38 wins, it will be a down year for them. I just think they're set up to challenge and contend and to be a good team that can at the very least be 500.
Did I say Hornets?
You did, but we may have. Wait, come on. You're not the first, it won't be the last.
I've written it many times already.
Yeah, it's been, you know, I covered them 10 years as the Hornets, so I apologize if I said that. But yes, Pelicans, of course. I think that they believe they can be a playoff team, and I would see them going, you know, as high as the fifth, not a top 4 seed, but maybe as high as the 5th seed. As high as the 5th seed. Brett, you're the first person that I've spoken with that has them going that high. A lot of reporters, experts have said somewhere between 7 and 8. But, you know, I think that if they stay healthy, they're going to surprise a lot of people in the NBA.
Sure. I mean, to me, that's the key. If you can keep them healthy, then they're going to challenge. But if they're the type of team right now that if they have one guy who's injured, I'm not saying the wheels will fall off, but they're not going to be nearly the team that they will if everybody's there.
Well, will this city go bananas if they end up being as high as the 5th seed in the West, coming from where they've been?
Well, here's the thing: is that, you know, where they've been is a lot of losses, but a lot of close losses, and Monty Williams is a defensive coach. I think he felt like they got away from that a little last year, but he has scorers who can close out games, and if they get the defense back to where it was his first 2 years, and they're in every game and have the scorers who can close out games, and they can just pull out a lot more games than people think. But you know, you're right. I've seen a lot of the national people pick them a lot lower than I am. But maybe,
some have them not even making the playoffs, barely missing.
I think this year we'll find out a lot about Monty Williams. You know, as much as the players have to adapt to the coaching, the coach has to adapt to the players. And he has an offensive team right now. Sure, they need to play defense, but they're a team set up for offense. And if he only harps on defense like he has in the past, then things aren't going to go well. He needs to be able to adapt to what he has on his roster.
You know, I heard a lot of rumblings of this early in the offseason. Do you guys believe that Demps and Williams are on the hot seat this year? I'm going to tell you right now, I don't. I don't, but do you guys?
I wouldn't say that they're on the hot seat. it really just depends how they do. If they're showing improvement, but maybe not as much as people are hoping, I think they'll get another year. You know, it's really what your standard is. But I think if they miss the playoffs and they have some real bad runs or bad stretches of games, you know, and they're not injury plagued, and still having these struggles, you know, tactical problems at the end of games, and it's the same thing we've been seeing where they can't pull out games in the end. Then they're in trouble.
You know, I look at it that Tom Benson shelled out money to build this team what it is now. He wants them to contend, and he may not want them to. He wants them to be a champion, but he realistically knows that they're probably not yet there yet. But if they don't contend, if they don't look like a team that's on the rise and they're just kind of bumbling around, then yeah, I think they're definitely on the hot seat.
Guys, we're going to shift gears to the collegiate game now, and as we do, I want to remind everybody, you can call in right now. The first 3 callers will get a pair of the of Tulane-Tulsa tickets for this week's game in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. That's 866-3200. First 3 callers get a pair of tickets each to go out and enjoy Tulane, and tell you what, Greenies are having a heck of a season so far. Did either of you guys foresee the big jump that they've made this season?
I thought they'd be at least a year away. I mean, you know, we saw last year that he was just kind of trying to piece everything together and keep it going, Curtis Johnson. And this year, the skill position players were there, but the last thing is going to come around at the line in college football, because that's the area that has to be the most physical and put on the most weight and really make and improve in their strength. To do it this quickly, I think is a surprise and a testament to the program that CJ's building.
Well, yeah, I hope they could do this, but I'm still pleasantly surprised. And again, you know, we talked about this with the Saints before. They're 5-2, but their last 2 victories were on last-second field goals, or one was a triple overtime field goal, you know, after they had the benefit of a missed field goal by the opponent. So they're kind of a tenuous 5-2, you know, but 5-2 for the first time, I guess, since 1998.
Yeah, I believe so.
Best even since 1998, which was the undefeated season. And you got to take it, because clearly they've gotten better. Because before, what would happen is things would go wrong and they would collapse and get blown out.
Yes.
Now they're fighting to stay in the game, and then coming up with the will, you know, and the clutch play to pull them out, you know, and that's a great sign for that program.
What's been the biggest difference?
CJ. I mean, I don't think you can say enough about the confidence that he instills in the players, and obviously he can recruit as well as anybody to get this talent at Tulane where they've been lacking for so long. But you know, here's a guy who was with Miami when University of Miami was really good. He was with the Saints when the Saints won the Super Bowl and you know, started on this trend of what we're seeing now. And I think he knows what it takes to win. The players know that he knows what it takes to win, and they're going to listen to him. And I think that's so big, especially at the college level, when these young players can believe in their coach and their teammates. And I just think he and what he does and what he instills is the biggest difference in this program.
Well, Brett, they really have bought in, haven't they?
Yeah, they have bought in, and one good thing he did, I think, was he went and got the best, you know, and the great thing, the thing that CJ has going for him is there's so much talent down here, and not all of that talent matures at the same rate. So he got the best talent he possibly could that maybe hadn't quite impressed the big schools enough. Although in some cases they had, because Darian Monroe, it seemed like, was as good as gone to Texas A&M, and he's here, you know, in the Tulane defensive backfield. But he got those guys, and he started them right away. I think there was something along the lines of 13 freshmen who played, true freshmen who played last year, and they've got that year, that tough years under their belt. They came back, you know, worked harder than ever in the off season, and now they have, you know, and they have also got some transfers, which has been kind of the glue that's maybe holding it together in some cases, and good coaching, more mature, talented players, and it's just paying off.
Huge win against East Carolina a couple weeks back, but again, they got a big challenge against Tulsa this weekend. This is a team they have not beaten since 1968, a team that has consistently given them problems, a team that has come into Louisiana and grabbed some great athletes to put on that team, something that CJ is obviously going to try to stop going forward. How do you see this game this weekend?
It's weird to say, but at this point, how do you go against Tulane?
I was going to say, how do you go against them?
They just seem to be on this roll, and look, when you're winning games and things are going your way, you just can't. The snowball rolls down the hill. Is the old cliche. But when you win 2 games, like Brett was saying, in the triple overtime, last second field goals, that just carries over. And I don't see why not pick them at this point.
Yeah, oddly for me, this is one of those games that I wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole as far as trying to predict it. And here's why: I think it's going to be a very emotional game on a lot of levels. Tulsa was the team against. Which Devin Walker was paralyzed. Right. Tulsa's had their number. This is a game that could make them bowl eligible. They're expecting to have one of the best crowds of the season. And I've seen some teams, especially immature teams, it's almost like they're too fired up and they implode on the field, And this is still a pretty young team in terms of the guys who are playing a lot. And it's just hard. And then Tulsa, we talk about how Tulane is 5-2, but it's a tenuous 5-2. Mm-hmm. I wonder if Tulsa's really. I think they're 2-4, and I wonder if they're
maybe a little better.
Maybe a little better. Yeah, maybe a good 2-4. Mm-hmm. A relatively good 2-4, and it's a really tough one for me to call.
Let's head to the phone lines, 866-3200. Let's go to Ricky in New Orleans. Ricky, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Bradley Henwerger of WWLTV.com and Brett Martell of the Associated Press.
Yes, how you doing?
How you doing, Rick?
Pretty good. Yes, I would like to ask the question about the New Orleans Pelicans. Do you think they will be a successful team for the 2014 season, 13-14?
Guys, I think they're going to have a successful season. I think they're going to be exciting. I've been excited about the roster additions and been waiting for the season to start. I can't wait for Indiana next week. I mean, I really think they got a shot to really make some real hay in the West.
Oh, I agree. But I guess you have to question what is successful. I mean, to me, anything better than they've put on the floor the last couple of years is successful because it's a step forward.
Is it playoff or bust? I mean,
I don't think it's playoff or bust. I mean, they've got the talent to be a playoff team, but if they can get to that near 500 level and show that they're going to be in every game, to me that's success because where they were last year, that's a long cry from being a near 500 team.
Yeah, I say it's only playoff or bust if they're healthy, but if they're healthy, they need to be. We need to be at the end of March and them still having a shot at one of those 7th or 8th spots. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't. I really believe they're a playoff team. I think the only thing holding them back would be injuries. Honestly, that's it. Injuries. Other than that, I think they're really set up with a nice roster. Back to the phone lines we go. 866-3200 to Gerald from Thibodaux. Gerald, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Thank you very much.
Your question?
Oh, my question, do you think St. Aug will win the 5A championships?
Gerald, thanks for the phone call. Guys, we haven't touched on prep. They've got the best player in the country in Leonard Fournette, a man among boys. Do you think that Aug's going to win it all?
I don't know much about the prep scene around here anymore. It's been several years since I've been on top of it. But, I just look back at that game that we saw on ESPN. I was in Chicago in a sports bar and watching that game. They're a tough team, and that Fournette is boy, is he good.
God, is he good, huh?
He's amazing. I think without knowing the rest of 5A around the state that they're going to be a tough out for whoever they play.
Right. Well, St. Aug is just, football's in a good place right now, it seems like, and they're producing a lot of good players going to college. And at high school especially, we talk about guys maturing at different rates. Well, I mean,
I'm looking for him to pull the S on his chest because he's that good.
Right. I mean, it's supposed to be a team sport, but at that level, sometimes when you have one kid that just looks like, big brother abusing his little brothers in the backyard, it can, it can make a huge difference. So, I agree with Bradley. I mean, I don't know that much about the high school scene around here. I know there's some other good teams, but they're solid.
Back to the phone lines before we go to LSU, and let's go to Rita. Rita, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Rita, you with us? Okay, I think Rita's dropped off. Let's talk a little bit about the Tigers. I saved them for last because, again, what a tough loss to Ole Miss. It's unbelievable that knowing what was ahead of the Tigers in terms of a possible getting back in the mix, possible national championship, and knowing that Ole Miss, that game against LSU is kind of their SEC championship. They're up for that game each and every year. The games have been so close over the last few years. I just kind of wonder how LSU could have come in that flat. Guys, your thoughts about the Ole Miss game and how this affects the Tigers going forward in the rest of the season?
I think that's a tough one to explain, except that they're college kids, you know, and it's easy for them to just hear question after question about how Ole Miss is not only on a 3-game losing streak going into that, but very, very beat up. And the problem is that, you know, maybe the question should have been, okay, well, Ole Miss is very beat up, but Hugh Freeze has done an excellent job recruiting. Are you curious to see what those recruits are going to do when they get their chance?
That's a great point.
You know? And but that wasn't really the line of questioning from what I saw. And, you know, I mean, these are college kids just going into this thinking, maybe exhaling a little bit coming off Florida, you know, with the defense seemed to get things sorted out, and they just probably they were probably overconfident going into that.
You know, I think the Alabama game, notwithstanding, because right now, you know, Oregon and Florida State may be the only teams close to Alabama in college football. They should have looked at the Texas A&M game that Ole Miss played, and that was a very good game against Johnny Manziel is really hard to stop, and they were this close from walking away with a win in that one, and I think that should tell you just how good Ole Miss is and where Ole Miss is going, and like Brett said, I mean, you know, come off Florida, they could have just been overlooking Ole Miss and saying, you know what, we just dominated, you know, Florida, who traditionally were the best teams in the country.
You know, we've heard from LSU fans all week long that this game was maybe a defining game because it may affect recruiting going forward. Guys, do you see that loss to Ole Miss and maybe being out of the national championship mix and the SEC championship mix so early in the season, earlier than we've seen in a long time in the Miles era, affecting recruiting?
I think we as humans tend to overreact one way or the other. You know, the sky's falling now because they just lost to Ole Miss. How could they possibly do that? On the other hand, you you look back a couple years ago after the Alabama game. Oh, we're the best team in the country. Yes. Nobody's coming close to us. It's somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's going to affect recruiting all that much because you look at the psyche of high school players. These really good high school players, they're going to say, well, LSU's not as good. We can come in right away and play, and we're going to be turning it around. I think that one game doesn't necessarily affect the way that recruits look at a school.
Yeah, I think recruits look at a school based on the coach that they're most comfortable with after the recruiting process, the campus that just gives them, you know, the best feeling. And I mean, even I think Bradley and I went through it. You know, we weren't recruited athletes, but we still did our campus visits. But, you know, we did our campus visits, and you know, and frankly, I was surprised. A school that I didn't think was my first choice was the one I ended up taking. I'm sure a lot of these players are the same. They do their campus visits. They meet the incumbent players that are going to be their teammates next year. They get that feel for it. And then in terms, I mean, look, LSU goes into every season with a shot, and the recruits know that. It's usually a difference of, you know, one or two surprising losses that they take, and the best recruits think, I'll make the difference if I'm there next year. I'll make them better, and that won't happen again.
Can this team take on a role that they haven't taken on in a long time? You know, a lot of people are saying the thought at the beginning of the season 9-3 would be their record. Can they take the spoiler role going forward, especially when you look at A&M and Alabama, obviously right in front of them?
I think so. I mean, they've still got big games on the schedule, and you know, big games bring out the best generally from players. And if we're not going to be in the title game, we're going to keep everybody else out of the title game. You think that's the thought of these young athletes. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to kind of rally around that.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably think, I think athletes are trained to think this way. We know that the odds are against them, but the fact of the matter is the 2007 team that won the national title lost 2 games. And crazy things happen at the end of the year. So if you're an elite athlete, how can you not think, I can't wait to play Alabama, beat them. I can't wait to play Texas A&M and beat them, finish the season strong with Arkansas, and see how we stack up. They're still technically alive for a BCS Bowl, even if they're not alive for the national championship. They're still playing with a lot of pride. They want to win. A lot of them have NFL caliber talent and definitely want to play well for that reason. So, you know, they'll be strong.
we expect too much out of this team? I mean, when you look at the losses that they've had over the last couple years, defections to the NFL, just to expect them to reload and to be right back in the mix with an SEC and a national title hopes, was that expectation maybe a little bit too much?
I think LSU is really the story of the SEC right now. You know, we come in each season thinking this is the biggest, baddest conference, and this is one of the biggest, baddest teams in the SEC. But at some point, attrition to the NFL hits. And you look at Georgia, you look at Florida, you look at LSU, and so much talent in the last 3-4 years has gone to the NFL that I think we're seeing finally it catch up to the teams. And our expectations are always high at LSU. Expectations are always high for the SEC. Sometimes you can say they're unrealistic, but you know they are what they are, and I think they'll be back.
Right.
I think they were realistic, and here's why. I mean, there's a difference between realistic and being on the money. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Realistic because they have 2 losses, and both of them were by 3 points on the road at the very end of the game. And that's how close they are to still being undefeated going into this game. And if they had pulled out one of those 2 games, then they'd still technically be in the hunt. They'd have the SEC West in their own hands going into the Alabama game. And this conversation would be a little bit different right now.
No, it would be. It would be. Les Miles is on the hot seat. If you listened to his radio show the other night for the first time, I mean, fans were kind of seething. What fans don't understand or realize is that Les Miles not going anywhere. Just the way his contract is structured, it's a $15 million buyout between now and December 31st, 2015. So honestly, there's not a chance in the world that anybody's going to buy him out. Talk about Les Miles, clock management, how he is as a coach, and the love-hate relationship between him and the fan base.
This is what I always say about Les Miles when people ask me, is that he is a terrific process coach, and I'm talking about the annual process of running a major college program, recruiting, making sure he has high-paid assistants. A lot of times he's not bargaining for himself when he's talking to administration. He wants high-paid assistants. He wants $1 million for John Chavis, you know, guys like that. And getting a contender, coming in every August with a national title contender, and kids who love him and play hard for him to the very end. His weakness, you know, rears its ugly head late in the fourth quarter of some of these games.
Against Ole Miss.
Yeah, against Ole Miss, once against Tennessee.
Yes.
And one of the craziest games I ever covered. But the biggest problem is who preceded him, you know? And you just can't, you cannot fire a coach for not being Nick Saban. You can't do it because no other coach in the country is Nick Saban.
Right.
You know, but it magnifies, in his particular case, because he followed him, every setback he has is magnified because it's just, you know, compared directly to Alabama and Nick Saban.
I'll tell you what, Brett, you're right on. I think the fan base has got to understand Nick Saban is not coming back. Okay? He's not. I mean, as much as everybody would love to see him back in purple and gold, he's not coming back. And again, you've got a pretty good coach in Les Miles right now. And, you know, I always ask the question when somebody says fire Miles, well, who are you going to go get?
I don't know. Les Miles is to me, he's a great coach. Yeah, he has his issues. Most coaches do have their issues. But he, you know, look back at LSU prior to Nick Saban. Look at the program now. It's light years ahead of where it was prior to Nick Saban. And the thing that I like that he's done is he's been consistent. He's kept it up. It's not like they've fallen all the way down to 3-9. They've been a good team for his entire tenure there. They've been a great team some of the years, but they've been a good team for his entire tenure there.
No doubt. Guys, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Really appreciate you guys being on the panel. Really had a great time really talking a little sports. And again, Brantley Henwerger of WWLTV.com and Brett Martell of the Associated Press. Once again, thanks for being with us. And again, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show on Fridays at 10 p.m. here on WLAE TV. Also, you can catch me on the radio on 990 AM WGSO weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can also listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, and you can catch previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports on ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to our guests, again, Brantley Henwerger and also Brett Martell. Also, thanks to the WLAE production staff staff, as well as Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, my producer-director, William Hill, and, of course, for Brantley Hedberger and Brett Martell, my name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you right back here next week for Inside New Orleans Sports, 6 p.m. on WLAE TV. Good night, New Orleans.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation.